The United States government has now been partially shut down for 34 days, and tensions in Washington continue to rise. As millions of Americans wait for relief, the Trump administration has announced a plan to partially fund SNAP benefits, offering only half of the normal payments to families who rely on food assistance. This marks yet another flashpoint in a political showdown that has left federal agencies closed, workers furloughed, and essential programs hanging in the balance. In a court filing on Monday, the administration said it will use emergency reserves to provide 50% of eligible households current allotments under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as SNAP. Officials said they are acting under court order and are using the Department of Agriculture's $4.65 billion contingency fund to keep the program running, but only partially. That reserve is roughly half of what is needed to fund SNAP for a full month, leaving millions uncertain about their next payment. The administration stated it is fulfilling its obligation to expend funds during an emergency, but acknowledged that no funds will remain for new applicants, disaster assistance, or as a cushion against shutting down SNAP entirely. The move comes after two federal judges, one in Massachusetts and another in Rhode Island, ruled that the administration must use contingency funds to continue paying SNAP benefits, even during the shutdown. Judge Indira Talwani in Massachusetts wrote that the government is required to use all available resources to maintain the program. Meanwhile, Judge John McConnell in Rhode Island ordered the administration to distribute those funds immediately and report back to the court by November 3rd. The administration's response confirms compliance, but only partially. In other words, the court said, "Keep the program running," and the administration answered, "We'll do half." For millions of low-income Americans who depend on SNAP for food, that difference is not symbolic. It's survival. While the courts push for relief, Congress remains at a standstill. The shutdown, now in its fifth week, began on October 1st, and it shows no sign of ending soon. President Donald Trump has called on Democrats to abandon their demand for expanded health care subsidies in the spending package. He is urging lawmakers to pass a Republican-backed short-term bill that would reopen the government temporarily and restore full funding for programs like SNAP. Democrats, however, argue that any funding bill must include additional health care support for struggling Americans, something Republicans have repeatedly rejected. The result? Another week of gridlock, with federal workers unpaid, agencies under strain, and millions of families left in limbo. In the Senate, Majority Leader John Thune has dismissed attempts by Democrats to pass funding for individual programs like SNAP or WIC, calling that a one-off here, one-off there approach that doesn't solve the bigger issue. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, on the other hand, says the GOP should stop blocking targeted relief bills that would immediately help American families. Over in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson says he's hopeful that results from upcoming elections in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City might change Democrats' position. He told reporters, "Maybe after tomorrow they'll come to their common senses and do the right thing." But for now, neither side is blinking. The effects of the shutdown are spreading. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned that flight delays and cancellations could soon worsen if the shutdown continues. He told ABC News, "If the government doesn't open in the next week or two, we'll look back at these as the good days, not the bad ones." So far, the impacts on air travel have been relatively limited, but staffing shortages among air traffic controllers are starting to cause delays at major airports. Other essential services, like Social Security, are still functioning, because those payments are classified as mandatory spending by law. That means retirees and disabled Americans will continue to receive their checks, though offices are operating with reduced staff and limited services. Meanwhile, programs like USE, SNAP, and National Park operations remain on emergency footing. Some partially funded, some halted entirely. If the shutdown continues through Tuesday, November 4th, It will tie the record for the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, which also happened under Trump's first term in 2018 to 2019. That shutdown lasted 35 days, driven by a standoff over border wall funding. Now, history seems to be repeating itself, this time over healthcare subsidies and spending priorities. Economists warn that the continued closure of federal offices could soon ripple across the broader economy, from delayed paychecks to slowed air travel and suspended federal contracts. President Trump has repeatedly urged Senate Republicans to end the filibuster, the rule that requires 60 votes to pass major legislation. He argues that Democrats are using it to block any spending bill that doesn't include their priorities. But Senate Republicans, including Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson, insist the filibuster is an important safeguard that ensures bipartisanship and prevents rash decisions. Johnson said he personally spoke with the president over the weekend, acknowledging Trump's frustration but maintaining that desperate times don't justify breaking the rules. Behind the political drama are real people feeling the consequences. Federal workers have missed multiple paychecks. Families depending on SNAP are receiving only half their food assistance for November. And uncertainty is growing among businesses and communities that rely on federal funding. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries accused the administration of weaponizing hunger by withholding benefits during the shutdown. He said Democrats are ready to negotiate anytime and anywhere, but not, in his words, under extortion. President Trump, meanwhile, insists the government must reopen before any deal on health care or spending reforms can happen. In a recent interview, he said, "I'm not going to do it by extortion." As the shutdown stretches into its 34th day, the country stands at a crossroads. The courts have stepped in to keep food assistance partially flowing. Congress remains locked in a bitter partisan fight. And millions of Americans continue to live with the uncertainty of when their next paycheck or their next meal will come. If no deal is reached soon, the shutdown could become the longest in U.S. history, with consequences that reach far beyond Washington, into every corner of American life. This has been a special report on the 2025 government shutdown and the SNAP funding crisis. Stay with us for continuing coverage and expert analysis as the story develops.